Welcome back everybody, DestinysJesus here. In this video, it's a really important requested topic from you guys, which is how to go pro while still in school. Now for majority of pros, like 95% of them, they are actually out of school. They're either doing online school or they're doing a very limited amount of school where they're just going in for a couple days a week. I know for you guys that is majority not the case. You're all still going to school or you're in higher education like college or something, right? Where you're still trying to pursue this game and improve. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down 8 of the best tips for you guys based on what I've got from information from pros who are still at school. These are players like Rezon, Chapix, K1nzell, who recently just finished school, Riley as well, who also just recently finished school, as well as JannisZ as well. JannisZ has literally been in full-time education in Germany, where he's doing 8 hours of school per day, and he's managed to win 2 FNCSs as a solo and a trio, and be one of the most consistent players as well. Now, if any of these players can still manage to go to school full-time and place, there's no reason why you guys can't, so make sure to watch this video and to check out all of these tips in here as well. Okay, so first things first, nothing in here is going to be any type of bullshit tips like telling you guys to drink loads of caffeine and stuff, right, to make sure you can stay up all night and play and still have energy at school. That really isn't that useful. Instead, I'm just going to give you really simple tips that are going to give you more free time to play Fortnite or to do anything else you want to do, like sports or something, right? Anything like that is completely fine, and these will help you just give you more free time and make sure you're able to learn and improve better as well. Okay, so first things first is to make sure that you know your schedule for each day and you've got everything laid out. And also what's really important with these schedules is to make sure you know exactly when things are coming up, like FNCS weeks that are really important and you'll be grinding for, and also when assignments are coming up, right? If you're not staying on top of everything and you can have something clash, that's gonna be a big issue there. You're not gonna be able to play as much, or you just miss assignments, which is obviously bad as well. Now in the same vein as the first tip, this is something really useful to do, is just staying on top of all of your homework and assignments. As soon as you get home, just get them done immediately. This means that you've got way more time over the weekends when there's tournaments on or there's show cash cups on, right? We've got way more time and most importantly, energy. If you have way more energy, you're able to play to your best during the tournaments. So just make sure you're finishing everything as soon as you get home, or if you've got a larger assignment, make sure you break it up into chunks where you're not doing it on tournament days, so you've got a lot more energy for those actual tournaments where it's really important to be playing your best. Okay, our next tip is to make sure you're always getting at least 8 hours of sleep. Sleep is single-handedly the most important thing for making sure you're playing well and also making sure you're able to learn well as well. So many people think they can function on less sleep, and to be honest, that really isn't true. They end up overcompensating with caffeine, they're not playing worse, and they don't really realize why, and it's just because they're not sleeping enough and making sure they're resting enough as well. This is a small tip, but make sure you always have your dinner straight away after you're back from school before you start doing all of your work. This basically means that later on you don't have to interrupt your tournament play or interrupt your scrims, whatever you're doing, and you instead can focus, and also you've got the energy to make sure that you can play for the entire time as well. Now our 5th tip is to make sure that you know how to balance the amount of work that you're doing with how much work you're actually doing on Fortnite as well. If you've got a big amount of exams coming up or loads of assignments that you need to do, make sure you take a little bit of backseat on how much you're actually grinding on Fortnite, so you can instead put that energy and effort into your schoolwork. And the inverse is also true. So if you're playing a lot more Fortnite, there's a big tournament coming up, you can take a little bit of a backseat, make sure you're still staying on top of all your schoolwork, but take a little bit of a backseat and instead put a lot more energy on focusing on the big tournament. Like Grand Royal coming up, or All Stars that just happened as an example, is a really good case study of that. Another useful thing to do is to make sure that if you've got a deadline coming up, you plan out every single thing in advance, so you don't have to cram or interrupt what you're doing with tournaments. Let's say you've got a big assignment coming up in 2 weeks and you need to finish that. Make sure you go ahead and set aside how many hours you roughly think it's going to take, like 4 hours, and you set aside, okay, I'm going to do an hour on Tuesday, hour on Wednesday of both weeks, and also give myself a little bit of time on Thursday to make sure it's completed as well. That means that you don't have to cram it last second where there's going to be a tournament on, like an FNCS over the weekend or anything that you interrupt, and you can still have a large amount of time where you can still play. You don't necessarily need to take a full day off playing as well. Okay, a lot of people ask me this, whether I think you should still be playing other region tournaments, like if you're EU, can you still stay awake in the night to play NA, or if you're NA, can you still stay awake in the night to play NA West? And I definitely think you can, depending on how you feel the next day. If you're able to function like 6 hours of sleep or something after you've played another region, make sure that you're able to compensate the next day with a little bit more sleep, right, as I mentioned earlier. If you only get 5 hours of sleep because you're playing a tournament, just make sure the next day you're trying to overcompensate, sleep a little bit more, maybe sleep in a little bit, right? Just so you don't have to ever have that period of time where you're tired for like an entire few days just because you didn't get enough sleep on one day, which is really disastrous. Okay, now tip number 8, the final one, is the biggest one. Don't be lazy. You can't sit around and play other games. You can't sit around and watch Netflix or YouTube. You're not going to have enough time to put the necessary time in to actually get good at Fortnite and go pro if you're not being 100% productive, and that's the honest truth. Any single player like Riley, when he was the best in the world, mechanics wise, when he was still at school, he wasn't sitting around and getting home and watching Netflix. He was instead just hopping on immediately, doing his Kovacs routine, doing his whole edit course routine and everything like that, and then getting straight into playing Fortnite and scrims. The same concept goes for any other pro player that was at the top of their game while still at school. You need to make sure you're being 100% productive. They're not sitting around starting a new Netflix series, right? They are always making sure they're putting as much energy into finishing all their schoolwork and then getting straight into Fortnite right after.